September 1969. Captain Roger Stewart gripped the wheel of a 1,000-foot oil tanker, navigating the frozen maze of Canada's Arctic archipelago, the most dangerous waters on Earth. For 3 months, his ship smashed through ice thick enough to crush steel, weaving among 36,000 islands. This was a graveyard of past expeditions, including Sir John Franklin's crew of 129 men, lost without a trace. But Stewart had what they didn't: a ship built like a battering ram and a mission to prove oil could be shipped through a region long thought impenetrable. When the Manhattan finally emerged into the Beaufort Sea, he hadn't just survived. He'd opened a frozen world that today is melting fast. The Arctic is warming nearly 4 times faster than the rest of the planet, unlocking shipping lanes 6,000 kilometers shorter than traditional routes. The Suez Canal? One blockage costs $9.6 billion a day. The Red Sea? Attacks have forced costly detours, driving shipping rates up over 200%. The Arctic? No choke points. Cheaper. Faster. And that's why Russia has fortified its northern coast, and why China, despite being 1,500 kilometers away, is pouring billions into its polar Silk Road. This is the story of how a frozen ocean became the world's most strategic trade corridor and the race to control it. To understand why the Arctic is becoming so valuable, we need to grasp the scale of what's happening. The Arctic Ocean spans roughly 14 million square kilometers, about the size of Antarctica. And for thousands of years, it's been sealed under ice averaging 2 to 3 meters thick, with ridges towering up to 20 meters. But since 1979, satellite records show the Arctic has lost about 12 to 13% of its summer ice cover every decade. That's over 1.3 million square kilometers gone each decade, an area larger than Peru. The summer of 2007 was the warning bell. Sea ice hit a record low, and for the first time in history, the Northwest Passage stayed open for several weeks. What scientists thought wouldn't happen until the mid-21st century had arrived decades early. Climate models now predict that the Arctic could see its first ice-free summer by the 2030s or 2040s, depending on emissions. Ice-free doesn't mean water stays open year-round, but it does mean that for weeks or months at a time, ships could move freely through waters once locked in ice. We're witnessing the disappearance of a geographical feature that has existed since the last ice age. On the North American side, melting ice is unlocking Canada's labyrinth of 36,000 Arctic islands, revealing the Northwest Passage, a continuous waterway from the Atlantic to the Pacific. But this isn't just a Canadian story. On the Eurasian side, Russia's northern sea route is also breaking free of ice earlier each year. It hugs Russia's Siberian coastline from Murmansk to the Bering Strait, giving Moscow a direct shipping lane between Europe and Asia entirely within its control. And far from these icy shores, China is paying attention. Sitting 1,500 kilometers from the Arctic Circle, Beijing sees these waters as an escape from its biggest maritime vulnerability, the Strait of Malacca, and a faster trade highway to Europe. The Great Melt isn't just about ice disappearing, it is rewriting the geography of the Arctic. For the first time in human history, 2 distinct blue water highways, Canada's Northwest Passage and Russia's Northern Sea Route, are emerging from beneath the ice. And with every summer that the ice retreats, those waterways stay open a little longer. But this transformation isn't just about geography, it's about distance. And in global trade, every kilometer matters. Today, a container ship sailing from Shanghai to Rotterdam via the Suez Canal covers about 20,000 kilometers in roughly 34 days, passing through some of the world's most politically unstable waters, where recent attacks have pushed shipping insurance and fuel costs into the hundreds of millions. The Arctic's Northwest Passage could cut that journey to 14,000 kilometers and just 20 days at sea. A 6,000-kilometer shortcut, like erasing the entire distance from New York to Rome. The math is staggering. A typical container ship burns about 250 tons of fuel per day. Saving 14 days means 3,500 tons of fuel not burned, worth around $2.1 million per voyage at current prices. If just 10% of global trade shifted to Arctic routes, annual fuel savings alone could approach $50 billion. And it's not just about saving money. The Arctic bypasses every major maritime choke point. No Suez Canal bottleneck, no Strait of Hormuz, no Malacca Strait. For China's exporters, that last point is critical. The Strait of Malacca carries most of China's trade with Europe, but is narrow, congested, and under U.S. naval influence. The Arctic offers a way around it. But faster trade is only half the story. Because while ships move above the surface, what's buried beneath the ice could be even more valuable. The Arctic isn't just a shortcut, it's a treasure chest. Check this out. The Arctic is home to staggering reserves, about 90 billion barrels of oil and 1,669 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. Roughly 30% of the world's undiscovered natural gas and 13% of its undiscovered oil. It's not just hydrocarbons. The Arctic holds vast mineral wealth, including rare earth elements, zinc, nickel, cobalt, and uranium. Resources critical for renewable energy, electric vehicles, and high-tech manufacturing. Some estimates put the total value of Arctic resources at over $35 trillion. As the Greenland ice sheet retreats, new deposits are being exposed. This autonomous territory of just 56,000 people could, on paper, become one of the wealthiest places per capita in the world. Chinese state-backed companies have already invested heavily in Greenlandic mining projects, including rare earth and uranium extraction. Conservative economic models suggest Arctic resource extraction could generate over $1 trillion annually by 2050, reshaping global energy and mineral markets. But when this much is at stake, trillions in oil, gas, and minerals, competition is inevitable. The Arctic is no longer a frozen frontier, it's a strategic prize, and the race to secure its riches has already begun. The Arctic's economic promise has triggered a modern scramble for control, a high-stakes contest between the world's most powerful nations. And guess who is moving the fastest? Russia. It has reopened more than 50 Cold War-era Arctic military sites and commands over 40 nuclear icebreakers, the largest fleet in the world. Its northern sea route, hugging the Siberian coast, is the most developed Arctic trade lane, giving Moscow a potential monopoly on Eurasian Arctic shipping. China, calling itself a near-Arctic state, has invested tens of billions in its Polar Silk Road, funding ports in Iceland, backing Greenlandic mining projects, and partnering with Russia on Siberian liquefied natural gas exports. Officially, these are scientific and commercial ventures. In reality, they're strategic footholds in a region that could control 21st century trade flows. The United States and Canada are scrambling to respond. NATO has staged its largest Arctic exercises since the Cold War, and Canada has committed $72 billion to Arctic defense, the biggest military investment in its modern history. But this is where the real tension lies in overlapping territorial claims. Russia claims underwater mountain ranges extend from Siberia. Denmark argues the same ridges connect to Greenland. Canada maintains they originate from their Arctic islands. These disputes could determine who controls trillions in resources. But for all the global attention, one country sits right at the center of it all. And it's not Russia or China. It's Canada, because the most valuable shipping lane in the Arctic runs straight through its backyard, and Canada wants full control. That claim would give Ottawa the right to set transit fees, enforce environmental rules, and control passage, potentially collecting $10 to $15 billion annually at current Suez Canal rates. The U.S., however, disputes this, insisting the Northwest Passage is an international strait open to all ships without fees. This disagreement has simmered since the 1980s, but as Arctic shipping becomes commercially viable, the stakes are rising sharply. For Canada, Recognition of its claim would mean a windfall and a say over one of the world's most strategic trade corridors. For its rivals, it would mean paying tolls to sail through what they see as global commons. In the race for control, the Arctic is no longer a blank space on the map. It's the chessboard where energy security, shipping dominance, and national prestige collide. But beneath the race for control and profit lies a deeper cost, one that doesn't show up on balance sheets. Because the Arctic isn't just a trade corridor or a treasure map. It's a living ecosystem and home to communities that have thrived here for thousands of years. The Arctic's transformation isn't just an economic or strategic story, it's an environmental one. As sea ice vanishes, polar bear populations are plummeting, their hunting grounds melting away. Indigenous communities that have thrived here for thousands of years are watching their traditional roots disappear, their cultural practices upended by a changing landscape. Increased shipping brings new dangers. Heavy fuel oil spills in these remote, icy waters could be catastrophic. Even without spills, the soot from ship exhaust, known as black carbon, settles on the ice, absorbing sunlight and accelerating melt. Each new route opened could trigger a feedback loop of faster ice loss, turning the Arctic from a frozen shield into an open sea at unprecedented speed. Yet for the world's major powers, the Arctic's future is a prize too valuable to ignore. By 2050, these routes could handle $500 billion in annual trade, reshaping global shipping, altering energy markets, and redrawing the map of economic power. 3 futures are possible. 1. Cooperative development, where nations share routes, resources, and environmental protections. 2nd, intense economic competition, where commercial gain drives rapid development and geopolitical friction. 3rd, military confrontation, where unresolved territorial claims spark armed conflict in one of the most fragile regions on Earth. Right now, the signs point toward economic competition. Military buildups are accelerating, territorial disputes remain unsettled, and investment in Arctic infrastructure is surging. Captain Roger Stewart's impossible voyage half a century ago cracked open a frozen frontier. Climate change has now flung the door wide open. Routes that are 6,000 kilometers shorter, 40% cheaper, and immune to traditional choke points will define 21st century trade. The race for the Arctic will decide more than trade routes or national borders. It will decide who holds the keys to the world's final untapped frontier. When the last ice melts, will it mark the dawn of a new era of cooperation, or the opening move in the next great global conflict?